On the night of December 6, 1991, Austin, Texas, was shaken by a crime that would scar the city for decades. Just before midnight, fire crews responded to smoke rising from a small strip mall at 2949 West Anderson Lane. Inside a popular yogurt shop called I Can't Believe It's Yogurt, they found what first appeared to be a devastating blaze. But as the smoke cleared, the horror became unimaginable. For young girls, 17-year-old Jennifer Harbison, her 15-year-old sister Sarah Harbison, 17-year-old Eliza Thomas, and 13-year-old Amy Ayers, were discovered bound, gagged, shot in the head, and stacked in the back of the store. Their bodies had been set on fire, in what investigators quickly determined was an effort to destroy evidence. What unfolded that night became known as the Yogurt Shop Murders, one of the most infamous unsolved crimes in Texas history. Former Austin Police Detective John Jones, who was among the first on the scene, would later say, "It's something you never forget." For girls, brutally murdered, and an entire city asking how something this evil could happen in their neighborhood. The victims' names, Jennifer Harbison, Sarah Harbison, Eliza Thomas, and Amy Ayers, soon echoed across the city. Families, classmates, and community members gathered in shock and mourning. Candlelight vigils were held. The yogurt shop became a site of grief and unanswered questions. Amy Ayers, the youngest at just 13, had begged her parents to let her spend the night with her older friends. Jennifer and Eliza were closing the shop together, while Sarah and Amy waited to get a ride home. None of them could have known their night would end in a massacre. In the early days of the investigation, Austin police faced mounting pressure. The brutality of the crime and the youth of the victims created intense public scrutiny. Detectives pursued hundreds of leads, interviewing anyone who had been near the shop that evening. Witnesses reported seeing two unidentified men inside just before closing. But evidence was fragile. The fire had destroyed much of the crime scene, leaving investigators with little physical proof. By the late 1990s, frustration with the unsolved case mounted. Then came what appeared to be a breakthrough. In 1999, police arrested four young men, Robert Springsteen, Michael Scott, Maurice Pierce, and Forrest Wellborn. Investigators claimed they had confessions tying them to the murders. Springsteen and Scott, in particular, were brought to trial. Both were convicted, Springsteen sentenced to death, Scott to life in prison. But the confessions were controversial from the start. Defense attorneys argued they were coerced, given after long interrogations without evidence to support them. On the night of December 6, 1991, Austin, Texas, was shaken by a crime that would scar the city for decades. Just before midnight, fire crews responded to smoke rising from a small strip mall at 2949 West Anderson Lane. Inside a popular yogurt shop called I Can't Believe It's Yogurt, they found what first appeared to be a devastating blaze. But as the smoke cleared, the horror became unimaginable. For young girls, 17-year-old Jennifer Harbison, her 15-year-old sister Sarah Harbison, 17-year-old Eliza Thomas, and 13-year-old Amy Ayers, were discovered bound, gagged, shot in the head, and stacked in the back of the store. Their bodies had been set on fire, in what investigators quickly determined was an effort to destroy evidence. What unfolded that night became known as the Yogurt Shop Murders, one of the most infamous unsolved crimes in Texas history. Former Austin Police Detective John Jones, who was among the first on the scene, would later say, "It's something you never forget." For girls, brutally murdered, and an entire city asking how something this evil could happen in their neighborhood. The victims' names, and then came the blow that unraveled everything: DNA testing. In the early 2000s, advances in forensic science revealed that the DNA collected at the crime scene did not match Springsteen, Scott, Pierce, or Wellborn. In fact, the male DNA profile found in the shop and under Amy Ayers' fingernails pointed to someone entirely different. As a result, in 2009, the convictions of Robert Springsteen and Michael Scott were overturned. They were released, and prosecutors admitted they could not retry them without DNA evidence connecting them to the crime. The families of Jennifer and Sarah Harbison, Eliza Thomas, and Amy Ayers were devastated once again. What they thought had been closure collapsed, reopening old wounds. For nearly 2 decades, they had been told these were the killers, only to discover the real perpetrator was still out there. Former Travis County District Attorney Ronnie Earl once said, "The worst thing in any case is to get it wrong." And here, we got it wrong. For the next decade, the yogurt shop murders remained a cold case. But investigators never gave up. With each advancement in DNA technology, samples from the scene were reanalyzed. Among the key pieces of evidence was a .380 caliber shell casing found in a drain at the store. For years, it sat in evidence with no clear connection. But as forensic ballistics improved, it became possible to trace that shell casing to specific weapons. Meanwhile, DNA science itself was changing. Traditional Y-STR testing required a substantial genetic sample. But a newer method, called Y-STR profiling, allowed scientists to analyze DNA specifically on the Y chromosome, passed down through male lineage. This meant investigators could connect crime scene DNA to a male family line, even if the suspect was deceased. In recent years, forensic genealogy also entered the picture. By uploading unidentified DNA profiles into genealogical databases, analysts could build family trees pointing toward potential suspects. This method had solved other notorious cold cases, such as the Golden State Killer. And in Austin, it would prove to be the key. The DNA under Amy Ayers' fingernails was run through advanced Y-STR testing. The results pointed investigators toward the family line of Robert Eugene Brashers, a man who had never before been publicly connected to the case. Brashers had a violent criminal history across multiple states, including Missouri, South Carolina, and Arkansas. He was suspected in multiple assaults and murders, and his name had surfaced in law enforcement circles. But by 1999, he was dead, having taken his own life during a standoff with police in Kennett, Missouri. Still, the science didn't lie. Analysts confirmed that the male DNA present at the yogurt shop crime scene matched the Y-STR profile of Brashers. Ballistics testing further connected the .380 caliber shell casing found in the shop's drain to a weapon linked to him. It was the first time in over 30 years that investigators could confidently tie the crime to a suspect. Austin Police Chief Robin Henderson announced the breakthrough, saying, "Through a combination of advanced DNA testing, genealogical research, and forensic ballistics, we can now identify Robert Eugene Brashers as the likely perpetrator in the yogurt shop murders." While he is deceased and cannot face trial, this development allows us to move closer to justice for Jennifer Harbison, Sarah Harbison, Eliza Thomas, and Amy Ayers. The families, though relieved by the progress, remain haunted by the years of false starts and pain. Debbie Ayers, the mother of Amy, told reporters Amy was only 13. She had her whole life ahead of her. For decades, we've waited, wondering if anyone would ever be held accountable. I'm glad there's finally a name, but it doesn't erase the suffering. For Detective John Jones, who still remembers the smell of smoke and the sight of 4 young girls murdered, the case has lingered every day of his life. He kept the green and white shirt he wore that night, folded in his closet. "I told the families," he once explained, "the day I wear this shirt again will be the day this case is solved." And until then, it stays put. Yet even with Brashers identified, officials caution that the case remains technically open. Questions remain: did Brashers act alone? Did he have accomplices? Could other men seen inside the shop that night still be out there? Investigators continue to examine leads. Forensic experts note that while Y-STR DNA points to a family line, it does not provide a unique individual match the way full STR profiles do. But when combined with genealogical data and ballistics evidence, the case against Brashers becomes strong. Brashers himself was a drifter with a dark history. In 1990, he was connected to a violent assault in South Carolina. In 1992, he was convicted of unlawful firearm possession. Law enforcement now believes he may have been responsible for multiple unsolved crimes across the country. His death by suicide in 1999 closed his personal story, but not the stories of his victims. For Austin, the yogurt shop murders left an indelible mark. The case changed the way the city thought about crime and safety. It exposed flaws in interrogation methods, highlighted the dangers of rushing to convict without solid forensic evidence, and showed the agony that wrongful convictions can inflict on both the accused and the victims' families. And for the families of Jennifer Harbison, Sarah Harbison, Eliza Thomas, and Amy Ayers, the pain has never gone away. Every birthday missed, every holiday with an empty chair, every year of silence is a reminder of what was taken. Now, more than 3 decades later, the name Robert Eugene Brashers is etched into the history of this case. The science that cleared the wrongfully convicted has also brought a measure of truth. But for many, the yogurt shop murders will never truly be closed until every question is answered. As one prosecutor put it simply, justice delayed is justice denied. But at least today, we can begin to speak the truth. For Austin, for Texas, and for the families of Jennifer and Sarah Harbison, Eliza Thomas, and Amy Ayers, the nightmare of December 6, 1991, will never fade. But the pursuit of truth continues. Backhand index pointing right. This is raw reality, no gloss, no sugarcoating, just the truth. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more deep investigative stories.